Chaos is a funny thing. It disguises itself as normal in the moment. Using football as an analogy, the ball is handed off to a running back. That player runs forward like any other play. Our brain tells us they could break off a large touchdown run, they could be tackled for a loss, they could get a first down, they could gain a few yards, they could even fumble and the other team could gain possession or even score a touchdown. While the touchdown is a big play, even if it is 90 yards or more, our brains know it could happen. Fun, but not really chaotic, just a part of the game. But to truly analyze the play, we must look at other factors. Was the play the first and only big one of the game? Was it the first in a future chain of big plays, or one of a chain of big plays? Was it a backup running back or a third string running back? Was the score tied? Is the defense usually good against running backs? Is the defense usually terrible against running backs? When we comb through the facts, that one play could now seem chaotic, meaning it was not only unexpected, but it also changes the entire complexion of the game. Fantasy football is the bringer of chaos because we are now adding the luck of choosing individual players and hoping they all have big plays. In their individual games, their final stats could be seen as normal. The game could have gone as expected or even be boring, but the statistics added up against other individual statistics gives us a different narrative as we choose lineups and survive high-scoring fantasy weeks. A star player held to 20 yards in a game where that player's team wins by 40 points is not chaotic, it's normal. The player wasn't needed in the end because the game was already won. But in fantasy, that same statistical output is now chaotic because projections are meaningless. This might be why the battle for chaos and balance between Obsidians Abyssus and the Elders is somehow tied to a fantasy football league. Both sides pick up players with the shadows taking demigods and creatures that want destruction and are aided by greed and selfishness. The Elders choose players that might not be perfect, but they all balance each other out to get the end result. And so we have this war with a fantasy football league right in the middle of it, and the trophy they play for, the Green Ball, is somehow a key to the insanity of this scenario. Why? I keep coming back to why. This was in my mind in the early days of the Shadow Brigade. How can this trophy be in a prophecy to save the world? I think I now know the answer. Because chaos still exists even in a balanced world. Your fantasy team that consistently scores 110 points a week can still put up 160 or 60 in any given matchup. But when averaged, it still equals 110 points. The Green Bowl saves the world because the chaos it represents is too much for the shadows and their agents to resist. But the initial plan failed. So now, the Green Bowl is like any other artifact, something corrupted from its normal state that contains a strange energy. If we could use the corrupted artifacts of the Aishi against Ellen Trekken, then it shouldn't seem impossible that the Unseelie and whatever their master is could use the Green Bowl against us. It is an elder power within the Green Bowl, and the Chosen One still needs to claim it. But what happens if we're destroyed first? Does that mean that another creature could claim that power? Wouldn't you rip through dimensions just for the chance to hold it? There's still so many mysteries to unravel that will take time, but we must first survive and advance to what is coming next. Look up. The Green Bowl is in danger. The Master is here.
Welcome to the quest for the Green Ball, Òrdugh Truaillidh. This is it, the start of the 2023 playoffs. The 6 teams still remain in the hunt to be the chosen one and claim the Green Ball. 4 other teams will look to avoid being the dick butt, and of course there is a fight for better draft position in the consolation bracket as well. So we'll see how that ends up, but we care most about the championship bracket. And we will be breaking down the quarterfinals! We have 2 fantastic matchups to preview. Let's get right to it. First, number 4, the Clash at Demonhead hosts number 5, Risky Business at the waters of Cirein-Cròin. The Clash at Demonhead defeated Risky Business 96.86 to 84.14 back in Week 6, and the difference was at kicker and defense, and due to Christian McCaffrey having a bad matchup and being limited to just 11.2 points, well under his 20.03 points per week average. This week might once again come down to kicker and defense and whether McCaffrey is held under his average, but the computers are on Team Risky Business, giving them a 70.8% chance to win at the moment. Risky Business has options at quarterback, and that will be a big choice with Josh Allen capable of beast games on the other side. The question is whether Risky Business will go back to the Cowboys' defense. Even if they don't, Allen is going up against the Cowboys, so that defensive performance might still be important here. The Clash at Demonhead has the Jets, which has been solid even in bad matchups, but the Dolphins are a scoring machine at times, so turnovers and touchdowns could be key to us seeing double-digit defensive scores in this one. McCaffrey gets a golden matchup and is always a Green Bowl MVP candidate, having led former league member Meowmaster to a title back in 2018. Joe Mixon joins McCaffrey at running back, which will look to gain a big advantage over Chuba Hubbard and Samaje Perine. Hubbard has been doing very well lately, but Perine is touchdown dependent, and the Clash at Demonhead are lighter at the position with the Isaiah Pacheco injury. The Clash at Demonhead do have a perceived advantage at wide receiver with Jamar Chase and Amari Cooper versus Cortland Sutton and Tyler Lockett. Isaiah Likely versus TJ Hawkinson is interesting as both quarterbacks like to throw to tight ends, but the Vikings' passing game has been atrocious lately. Dobbs has also been benched. The advantage at kicker goes to the Clash at Demonhead regardless of who she puts out there, but Brandon Aubrey did just put up 22 points with his leg, so that's one thing to think about. This leaves 2 players to really break down here. For Risky Business, I'm once again, just like a couple weeks ago, I'm looking at running back Jahmyr Gibbs of the Lions. Risky Business's best stretch of games was between week 7, 8, and then 10 and 11, when Gibbs was averaging 20.55 points per week in those 4 straight games. Risky Business went 3-1 in those weeks and averaged 132.14 points, scoring over 100 in each matchup. You can argue that it was that stretch that put Risky Business into the playoffs. Gibbs didn't play amazing when he shared the field with David Montgomery this season, but he did reach the end zone again last week. He has 692 rushing yards, 288 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns this season, but he clearly has a cap with David Montgomery in the lineup. Still, Gibbs gets touches and can be explosive with them. Montgomery unfortunately gets the goal line carries though, so that means Gibbs usually needs to break off long runs if he wants to reach the end zone. Gibbs does get work through the air as well, but the next matchup against Denver is not as easy as the statistics might tell you overall. Denver has allowed 11 touchdowns on the ground and 4 through the air to running backs, but 7 rushing touchdowns and all 4 receiving touchdowns happened in the first 4 weeks of the season. Since then, Denver has allowed just 4 rushing touchdowns and 0 receiving scores to running backs. They also have held opponents to under 100 rushing yards to this position 5 times since week 6. One of the positives for Gibbs owners is that running backs have scored in the last 2 weeks against Denver. But again, does that benefit short runs by Montgomery or long runs by Gibbs? That's the question, and it could be the difference for a nice game out of the flex or a dud that could limit Risky Business's points. For the Clash at Demonhead, wide receiver Jaden Reed is certainly a wild card with the propensity to reach the end zone like a Deebo Samuel light in the last few weeks, both rushing and receiving. Reed has touchdowns in 4 of his past 5 games and had 21 receptions and 9 rushing attempts, several of those in the red zone, in those 4 games combined. While not beastly like Samuel, it is clear the Packers suddenly realized that Reed could be utilized in a similar way. With that athletic style of play that he brings, before this stretch of games, Reed had 2 total rushes all season, so this usage is promising for flex positions in fantasy. The Clash at Demonhead loves it too. Reed's play has been a part of her 4-game winning streak to make the playoffs. And the next opponent for Reed is the Buccaneers, who have allowed 5 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games. The Buccaneers have also allowed 193 receiving yards per game on average and 11 total receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. And we have to talk about A.J. Dillon only really being there and A.A. Ron Jones being dinged up. So that's maybe why Reed's even getting more work here. They're just trying to find some way to score on the ground when they get into the red zone. And since Reed has shown the ability to find the end zone through the air and on the ground, this could be the opportunity for the Clash at Demonhead to get a surprise performance and turn the projections on their head. If Reed continues to reach this end zone and possibly score twice, look out. A dud performance could end hopes of a playoff run, though. The other quarterfinal sees number 3 Remember the Titans hosting number 6 the Stellar Bitches for the 3rd time this season, and the 2nd time at the Gofta of the Highlands. This is a rematch from the last week when Remember the Titans won the Peaks of Ulka Division title over the Stellar Bitches. Remember the Titans, who won the 2021 Green Bowl, has actually won both matchups against the Stellar Bitches this season, 59.16 to 52.58 in week 1, and 114.94 to 73.22 last week. Both of those games were game of the weeks as well, so the matchup spotlight is not new to either team. The Stellar Bitches are not only hoping the 3rd time is the charm against the Remember the Titans, but are also looking for their first career playoff win. Remember the Titans is looking to get to their 3rd ever Green Bowl, which would tie former league member Meow Master for the league record. The Stellar Bitches lost Joe Burrow for the year and have not gotten the production they need out of trade pickup Josh Dobbs. The Pastronaut has been smoking AstroTurf and Space Bowie because Dobbs has been in the clouds the last few weeks and is supposedly benched now. Remember the Titans comes in with an 81.7% chance to win at the moment because of this, but the Stellar Bitches do have options on the bench, so this could be more like a 60-40 matchup by the time the game starts. Lamar Jackson obviously has a perceived large advantage to whoever the Bitches play at quarterback, though. Also, both the Saints and Dolphins defenses have amazing matchups, though the Giants are suddenly playing a little better, so that's something to watch. Bijan Robinson does have an advantage over David Montgomery for the Bitches at running back to help, but Brandon Ayuk and Puka Nacua have perceived advantages over Devontae Adams and whoever replaces Keenan Allen, who is just ruled out. Trade pickup Sam Laporta could also be key for Remember the Titans at tight end. And don't count out the kickers here. Will Lutz and Matt Gay could be kicking several field goals, and both have kicked 40-plus yarders in the past, so we'll see what happens. But the 2 players to watch here are both running backs. For the Stellar Bitches, I'm going with Rachaad White of the Buccaneers. White has been on fire lately. He has 745 rushing yards, 419 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns overall this season. 440 rushing yards, 186 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns have come in the past 6 weeks. During that stretch, White has averaged 16.43 points per game. The Stellar Bitches are 4-2 during these 6 weeks as well. And with Ellen out, the struggles at quarterback, and Devontae Adams not living up to his draft pick lately, the Stellar Bitches really need a beast game from someone. White could be that guy this week. He goes up against the Packers. They've allowed 106 yards per game on average and 12 touchdowns on the ground, 2 running backs. 6 of those touchdowns have come in the last 5 games with teams scoring multiple rushing touchdowns twice. If White can continue to exploit this recent weakness and get to the end zone a few times, it could be what saves the bitches from bowing out early again. But a dud would most likely doom her. For Remember the Titans, we can look at running back Breece Hall. Breece Hall has been capped by playing for a terrible Jets offense, and he still somehow has 625 rushing yards, 435 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. It's not bad. The up and down consistency makes it hard to play him week to week, which is why he was on Remember the Titans bench with 18.6 points this previous week. But Remember the Titans did have Hall in the lineup for 4 of his double-digit fantasy points games, weeks 5, 6, 8, and 11. Remember the Titans won 3 of those games as Hall averaged 17.8 points. Hall goes up against Miami this week, a team that allowed 2 rushing scores to Derrick Henry a week ago and has allowed 9 total touchdowns on the ground, actually 8 on the ground, 1 through the air, to running backs. The yards could be a problem. Running backs average just 81 yards on the ground per game against the Dolphins. Also worth noting is that Hall did have just 49 yards, 25 on the ground against the Dolphins in Week 12. Miami built a big lead and they couldn't really rush the ball, the Jets. It's hard to believe the Jets would have tried to utilize one of their only offensive weapons, but with the quarterback play, Hall really just needs to break tackles or be put in a position to get a chance to get into the open field, screen pass, or something like that. Remember the Titans lost in Week 12 when Hall struggled, and he won't want to see that again. If Hall doesn't score, it could leave an opening for the stellar bitches. But reach the end zone. Remember the Titans could be semifinals bound. Both of these matchups seem like they could be headed to risky business and Remember the Titans based on projections, but this is the playoffs. Strange things do tend to happen this time of year, so look out. Besides those matchups, there are also 2 consolation quarterfinals going on with teams looking to avoid the Dick Butt Bowl. Number 9 Air Jordan hosts number 12 Low-Key Lebowski Thor at the Caves of Brone Diomir in a rematch from the Week 7 Game of the Week when Lebowski Thor won 65.86 to 64. You can argue that that one loss cost Air Jordan a playoff spot, but the 0-4 start didn't help either. Air Jordan enters this game with a 72.6% chance to win. Dak Prescott versus Jalen Hurts is big, but Lebowski Thor will need his running backs to keep pace with Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, and Derrick Henry, which isn't expected. Taysom Hill versus Evan Ingram will also be a spot for Lebowski Thor to gain points, and don't sleep on the Texans versus Steelers defensive battle. My number 10 Gashgia Slews host the number 11 Siamese Dreamcats at the foggy fields of Aslignan in a rematch from Week 4 when my Slews won 117.88 to 61.96. Week 4 was a different time as my Slews were 2-2 and feeling good about the upcoming games. Feels like ages ago. In this one, my Slews have a 54.8% chance to win. Jared Goff versus Brock Purdy, Austin Eckler and Devon Achane versus Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle, and Stephon Diggs versus CeeDee Lamb are going to be the key areas. Keaton Mitchell versus Drake London in the flex could be big too, as is the Browns defense versus Colts matchup. So who's going to join Banditos del Rio and Green Acres in the semifinals, and who will be in the Dick Butt Bowl? Both questions will be answered very shortly. And that's the show for the week! Hope you enjoyed it. Just 3 weeks of episodes remain. Wow. It's always crazy how this time flies. So many weeks, so much lore. Before you go, check out the final power rankings heading into the playoffs. Until next time, salut.